Welcome back to Chatooine, everyone. I'm your host, Star Wars Only, joined with Darth Daddy Lunga and the Goldman. Here on Chatooine, we talk about the news, topics in the fandom, and simply chat about Star Wars. So if you have any questions for us, make sure to leave them in the live chat or send a super chat donation so you can be guaranteed an answer to your question before the show is over. Today, we're going to be talking about a new episode of The Mandalorian that came out, and the entire Star Wars fandom has been talking about it over the past few days. George Lucas reveals more details on his Star Wars sequel trilogy in a recent book, and it looks like a long-rumored series for Disney Plus is no longer happening. All that and more here on Chatooine. All right, boys. So we all know how we do this. We start off with the great topic of the last episode of The Mandalorian, and we've had a lot of questions, of course, about our cameos.
A lot of questions. They're like all over Twitter. I mean, I didn't know how it spread this far, but apparently,
bro, I was doing a watch party for the episode yesterday, and so many people were asking. I was like, I can't believe so many people remembered about our cameos.
Yeah.
I
saw it randomly on someone answering IGN on something. I'm like, whoa.
Yeah. That's the one that got me. So the freaking guy who, it was the Battlefront 2 actress, Iden Versio. And then some guy commented, he's like, I can't believe they cut out Goldman Lunga and Star Wars Only cameo. Oh, man. No, guys, we were all there. We were the stormtroopers. I don't think I got any pictures of it, at least for screen grabs, but Lunga got to be the what was it, the stormtrooper who landed on the front of the ship.
Yeah. I got thrown on the ship. I mean, there was a little bit of disappointment. I mean, it was a much more expanded scene. I had a whole aerial fight with that night owl. We were tussling in the air while he was holding me. My helmet was coming off. I pulled it back on again, then he dropped me. But they cut that all out, man. They cut it all out. So you don't get to see my face. I just hit the windshield.
Me and Goldman didn't get a really good scene. We were the guards outside of the bridge. We just stood there, and we heard Bryce Dallas Howard, all right, you're going to turn to your left and cut.
We actually had a really nice scene similar to the beginning scene of the finale of last season. And we chatted for 5 minutes, and we're like, hey, how you doing? And then the Mandos showed up and took us out. But that got cut too, which is unfortunate, but it is what it is.
I'm disappointed they didn't take my pitch for us being at that bar and hearing Mando going on that mission, and Lunga would have said, oh, I think that mission's going to be great. And I was like, yeah, it's going to be great. And then Goldman said it's going to be great. If that happened, I think the show would have been meta.
My contract's under negotiation is a problem. I mean, once I realized they were going to cut the scene with my face being revealed and had to wear the helmet, I walked off. I'm done.
Oh, I didn't know y'all got contracts. I didn't even get paid.
I'm having some trouble with my contracts because in my most recent video, I criticized the sequels, and so my shield checks they're delayed for now. So
no,
you're on that blacklist. You're on the blacklist.
Kathleen called me, how dare you criticize the Rise of Skywalker?
How dare you? Oh man. Well, despite our amazing cameos, what did you guys think of the recent episode of The Mandalorian? I'm hearing some people say it is the best episode of The Mandalorian so far, despite it being the shortest. And I'll be honest, I don't think it's the best. I think it is one of the best, probably top 5, maybe top 3. Personally, I think the what was it, Chapter 9, the one with Cobb Vanth, I think that was a little better than this one. And that might just be because I like the Western vibe and feel of that and the acting from Timothy Olyphant. But this one, I feel like in terms of Star Wars, man, this actually felt like I was watching a Saturday morning cartoon. Mm-hmm. So if you guys haven't seen the episode, we're of course going to talk about some spoilers stuff in this. So click out if you haven't already seen the episode. But yeah, spoiler alert, we actually got to see Bo-Katan and her little, what was it? The
Night Owls.
Sasha, yeah, it's not Night Owls. Sasha Banks, that was her name. We all thought she was Sabine, and
she didn't say a word.
Corvus Reese, I think is her name. In the subtitles, Corvus Reese.
Mm-hmm. What'd you guys think about the reveal of that and the way they pulled it off, Lunga?
Um, well, I kind of bust my nut a little early when I did the live stream of it. The moment I saw her coming in, and I started screaming, "It's Sabine Wren! It's Sabine Wren!" because we saw Sasha Banks. You know, I got sucked into that because the internet, that's all they've been talking about. And I'm like, "It's Sabine Wren! It's Sabine Wren!" Then when she was fighting and I saw the helmet, I'm like, "Oh, hold on, wait a minute. That might be Bo-Katan." And then when I got a better close look at the helmet, I'm like, "Oh yeah, that's Bo-Katan." And then she took it off. I'm like, okay, there we go. I just thought narratively it would have made more sense for Sabine because she was with Ahsoka at the end of Rebels. But just, yeah, it was surprising. Now, the moment I saw the title, The Heiress, I'm like, well, this might involve Bo-Katan just because of the title. But I didn't expect her to be the one to come save him. But at the end, I was not disappointed at all. I think, and I am one of those people who think this is like the best episode of The Mandalorian so far.
I agree. Goldman, what do you think about it? What would you like about this episode?
This episode is definitely up there. I'm not sure if it's my single favorite, but it's definitely up there. One thing I loved about this episode, even though I might have liked the Chapter 9 more, the one with Cobb Vanth, this episode I was just smiling the whole way through. There was some pretty good humor in this episode. Like when rarely when I'm watching something do I actually like laugh out loud. I don't know why when the when the Razor Crest was about to land. And then it was like hovering like 10 feet, and then it just flew over and went in the water. I don't know. That just gave me a really good laugh. When the frog lady saw her husband and she was running across the dock, like all arms out, I was like, that's so sweet.
Yeah.
Like, I had such a big smile on my face. And then just a lot of moments like that, whether it was just funny, something that was really sweet, or something that was so cool. Like I was just smiling this whole episode. I had no idea that Bo-Katan was going to be in this. Like, if you told me in the beginning of the season that Bo-Katan would be in the season, I wouldn't be surprised, but I wouldn't be like, oh, it's a guarantee. So when I saw Bo-Katan, I was like, at first, because, it wasn't obvious. Like, you see her in the distance, and then she comes down. I'm like, I think that's Bo-Katan's helmet. And then it was her. And I was like, yes! Like, I don't know, just the fact that a character that was fairly prominent in the Clone Wars, something that came out almost 10 years ago now. Like, now that she is back here, like, I don't know, it's just so cool. Like, to me, that just shows why Star Wars is the best. That, like, they take these animated characters and give them a spot in the live-action shows. Katie Sackhoff, man, she must have been so happy to finally be able to physically play Bo-Katan. And then, of course, when she mentioned Ahsoka, I gasped. I was like, ah! Like, oh, that was like, it just hearing her name, just like, you have to go meet Ahsoka Tano on whatever planet. That was just, again, just smiles throughout this whole episode. Honestly, I might have not been paying attention to a lot of the plot stuff. I did rewatch it and I got a little more things cleared out for me. But like this whole episode, I was just so happy watching it. There were so many things. And yes, since we did get our cameos, that was the cherry on top. But this episode, I thoroughly enjoyed.
Why is no one talking about the one thing I think is the most important part of this episode? I mean, unless people are talking about it and I haven't seen it, but I haven't seen it on the internet. Everyone's talking about Bo-Katan. Oh, we heard Ahsoka's name. That's all anyone's talking about, which is great. Don't get me wrong. I was super excited to see it. Why is no one talking about we're finally getting some details about Mando, his covert, and why they're not showing their faces? And we're like, but that doesn't jive with what we know. Dude, I love that. His covert is Death Watch. It is a cult, and they're indoctrinating children into their way of thinking. Yeah, they're the MAGA of Star Wars.
I was explaining it to my girlfriend because she's like, what's the difference between like our character Mando and like their like these other Mandalorians? I was like, well, basically, because we're Christians, I was like, it's kind of like the Old Testament versus the New Testament. You got these Death Watch people who are like, oh no, we're still sticking to the very old ways of not taking off our helmets. We're gonna fight anyone and everyone. And you got these people like Bo-Katan and her crew who are like, no, there's a new way that we're doing things. And
she actually used to be a part of Death Watch, actually.
Yeah. And what's not only that is that, he was all offended when she took off her helmet and was like, where'd you get that armor? And she's like, actually, this has been in my family. I have had the dark saber. I'm actually from Mandalore. Have you even stepped foot on that thing? You like, you privileged, spoiled brat picked up by the Death Watch.
I love when what'd she do? She was like, she mocked kind of This Is a Way. Like she was just like, she put Mando in his place.
This is the way.
I love that.
This is the way. And the other thing is that it also now creates a conflict between the whole idea of is it a creed or is it a race? Because we're like, everyone's like, not sure. Well, some things in the EU said it's a creed, and other people said it's a planting it. But we have obviously a history of a race of Mandalorians. You know what I mean? So it's like, what's true? Well, now we know. What the Death Watch, because they're small numbers and because they're trying to grow and trying to spread their philosophy, they're taking in non-Mandalorians and making them Mandalorians because it's a creed to them, not a race. Whereas Bo-Katan stuff, you have people, these are natural-born Mandalorians, and Mandalorians are Mandalorians from Mandalore.
You know what I love about that? It makes the Mandalorian culture much more complex. Like in Star Wars, things seem to be like pretty straightforward. Like we thought Mandalorians were all like this. Well, they're not. They're different parts, different cultures of the Mandalorians as a whole. And I love that part of the reveal. And also, I believe last week I did remember we did our predictions. One of mine was that we would find out about why Mando wears his helmet. So I'm giving myself a thumbs up for that.
Yeah, you were right. I like what the live chat is saying about this too, because it's adding some good topic. Zeus Skywalker says Death Watch broke up in different groups while Maul killed Pre Vizsla for different beliefs and loyalty, and then it must have also split up as well again when Bo-Katan lost the Darksaber. And I like that because that kind of leads into what Christian Jacobson is saying here. How do you think this will change Mando's view of Boba when he meets him? I like that because I think that means that when they do eventually run into each other again for like, actual conflict or whatever, because Boba's probably going to be reappearing later in the season, Mando might have a different view on him because he might look at him and say, okay, well, now I've met these other Mandalorians who do take off their helmets, and now I know there are different parts of my religion and my culture. It adds a lot to the story, and I think even though this was the shortest episode, I think it did a lot more in story for Mandalorian than a lot of the episodes that we've gotten in total. I mean, we're at 11 episodes right now. This is probably one of the top 3 in terms of story development and what has happened. And I have to say, Bo-Katan, the actress, or even just Bo-Katan herself, has aged like fine wine. Homegirl looks so young.
I wanted to ask, like, one of my friends who's a big Clone Wars fan, like, how old was she in the Clone Wars? Because now this is like more than 20 years later, and in
the Clone Wars, I think she was, because Satine was older than her, and I think she was in Clone Wars. I'm gonna guess she was like around early 20s, maybe she's like 23, something like that. I'm gonna guess. So she's pushing.
I'm gonna look 40? Up how old Katie Sackhoff is. So let's see.
I looked up how old Bo-Katan is, and it says, and this is from Inverse. It says we don't have an exact chronological birthday for her, but it seems. Thank you. But it seems fair to put her around 10 to 15 years behind Obi-Wan during the Clone Wars, which is roughly 22 ABY to 19 ABY. Even if we say she's like 25 by the last season of the Clone Wars, she would be pushing 50 years after the Battle of Endor. So if she's in her 50s, I will take that she looks solid here.
Okay,
but if
Katie
it was
Sackhoff is 40 years old.
How old is she?
She's 40.
40. That's what I was gonna say. I was guessing she was around 40. Just a little bit younger than me.
Well, she looks great, and I think she actually fits the persona and character of Bo-Katan pretty well. Like what we saw from Rebels, what we saw from Clone Wars. I think this is a little bit of Dave Filoni work happening right here because Jon Favreau, of course, is a big fan of Star Wars, and he was Pre Vizsla in the Clone Wars, so he's familiar with someone like Bo-Katan when it comes to the actual story of Mandalore. And I actually find that funny how Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau kind of met doing the Mandalorian arc in the Clone Wars series, and now they're making a series on the Mandalorian creed and kind of religion that they've got going on, and using characters from the Clone Wars like Bo-Katan and maybe Sabine. I really don't know if we'll see Sabine now because now we're talking about meeting Ahsoka. Right. Where would that put Sabine if she does appear? Because we've heard from a lot of, I guess you could say, credible sources that Sabine will be appearing in this season of Mandalorian.
What's interesting about that, well, for one, to quote George Lucas, it's like poetry. It rhymes with Favreau and the Mandalorians. But one thing you said that I love is that this episode, you're right, it is underestimated how much this impacts the story. Like when I first saw it, all the cool fan service stuff and just me smiling the whole time, I didn't realize a lot of these details. Like you said with the I didn't think about the Boba Fett connection, like how this would affect Mando looking at Boba Fett. Another thing I feel like a lot of people didn't don't talk about is that Moff Gideon mentioned a fleet for the Empire. I did not I didn't expect. I mean, I guess when I pictured this Imperial remnant, I didn't expect a fleet. But now we know there's a fleet out there. Now, regardless of how
there was
big that
also
is,
a leak on Reddit. I don't know if you guys saw it. I don't know if you want to see it. It's not a big leak, but it gives us an idea of the fleet and what possibly his ship could be. There were some top cards that were released or leaked from Mandalorian.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything, but it's still, that's a little piece of world building that we didn't know before. We didn't really know to what extent how big this Imperial remnant was. We don't know if it's involved with the First Order or not. How there's so many different things, and him mentioning a fleet, that's gonna be, we're gonna see this fleet at some point, I presume. I mean, if you mentioned it, something as important as that, then yeah. And also, I love the when the like the captain of the ship was like, "Long live the Empire," and then he like bit the thing, I guess, to kill him, whatever.
Yes.
Like, damn, these guys are committed to the Empire. It makes them seem a little bit more extreme than the original members of the Empire, which actually somewhat ties into the First Order. I mean, you don't really see this in the sequels, but in terms of the lore of the First Order, they are a lot more extreme and, in quotes, evil than I guess the Empire was. So if that's something they do end up tying into, that's cool for me. But if not, no problem. But a lot of small things like that, and then the character moments, I really liked.
Yeah, Lunga's got a view for the top card that he was talking about, the fleet.
Okay, right, it's a Artequin's class command cruiser from a new set of cards called the Mandalorian Static Series.
Oh, okay. It looks like the what do you call those things? There were like the ships and rebels that took people out of hyperspace.
Well, there was remember the Star Destroyers in the original trilogy were like a evolution of the cruisers we saw in the Clone Wars.
Yeah, the Venator.
And his Artequin's class starts out from the Clone Wars era.
Okay. And I think we see them a little bit in the do we? No, never mind. I was confusing with something else. Never mind. But okay.
I have a feeling that this is going to be something similar to what his command ship is for his.
Another thing I believe I saw, people were mentioning how, for one, it looks like there was a report that next week's episode, it's not really spoilers, but it's going to follow Mando going back to Navarro. So we'll get that Cara Dune and Grief Karga episode, because it's also directed by Carl Weathers. And I guess they're going to be doing something. Like that's all the description provides. But besides that, someone mentioned on Twitter that every shot that we've seen in this trailer, I believe, has been either from one of these first 3 episodes or presumably from that 4th episode. And I love that. I genuinely, besides them going to find Ahsoka, which we suspect will be in the 5th episode, I have no clue where the season's going to go. Like, there's so many pieces, and I just don't know how to tie them together. And that makes me so excited.
Yeah. Well, actually, as far as the Boba Fett connection, I think it's going to be the other way around. I actually think Mando's going to be, he's going to be like an Amish kid that steps out for Springer. What is it called? Wolf Springer or whatever. When they get 18, they get to leave the community.
The Amish.
But it's the thing, when they turn 18, they get to go out in the world for a little while before they come back home and live their Amish lifestyle. I think he's going to be disenfranchised. He's going to be, what were they teaching me? Is this real? Is this what it means to be a Mandalorian, or are they just like, zealots?
I think anything, he might actually continue to team up with like Bo-Katan, because she said, the offer still stands, and he might realize like their way is the actual way, and maybe try to reunite the clans. Maybe he goes to the armor from season 1 and ask her like why they were taught differently. I really like what Goldman was saying about a lot of the clips that we've seen in the trailer have kind of been used. I have one of the special looks that's a little less than a minute long right here, so we can take a look at that real quick and then see what potential scenes that we haven't seen yet or we kind of already expect to see. So let's take a look at that real quick.
Razor Crest, stand down.
I'm here on business. I need your help. I've been quested to bring this one back to its kind. If I can locate other Mandalorians, they can guide me.
This is no place for a child.
Wherever I go, he goes.
October 30th, only on Disney Plus.
Yeah, all those new scenes are going to be the next episode.
Yeah, you're right.
Most
Also,
likely.
It looks like literally all the new
voiceover?
stuff we haven't seen has just only been with Grief Karga and Cara Dune. Everything else we have already seen before, which means that either we're having 2 episodes of Grief Karga and Cara Dune, or it means that we're going to get a lot of Ahsoka Tano, Sabine Wren. Like, there's going to be a lot that happens of the last 4 episodes of this season, which is very good news for us diehard fans.
Also, it was a clever edit. Like when he goes up and he's shaking Grief Karga's hand when he's walking up with the child. That voiceover is probably not from that scene.
Yeah, definitely.
No, he said that I think in the beginning of the season.
Right.
You know, I'm quested to bring this child back to his kind. This makes me more excited to see where this goes because spoilers are a big problem with the Star Wars fandom in general. There's always leaks or something like that. This show has been able to keep its story under wraps pretty well. I mean, we've been told about, you know, the cameos and everything of Ahsoka and everything, but we don't really know what that entails. Like, is he actually going to deliver the child to Ahsoka and she say, yeah, I'll train him? Or is she going to be like, actually, I'm not a Jedi anymore. That thing's older than both of us and good luck. Like, so someone put in the live chat earlier, I wish I still had it, but wouldn't it be funny if like he meets Ahsoka and she's like, I came to this planet to die. Kind of like Luke from the Last Jedi.
Wow.
That would.
By the way, she's obviously gonna recognize the species. She's gonna know instantly that's Yoda species. Which
so are you saying that Yoda's gonna appear because she's gonna be like, oh, I know where Yoda's at or something?
No, I wonder. Do you think there's a do you think someone like Ahsoka knows the name of Yoda's species?
Probably not.
I don't think anyone knows the name.
No. I don't think it was even in the Jedi Chronicles. I don't think they even like.
It's something that Lucasfilm has never actually allowed anyone to talk about. Like even authors like Jason Fry. He's someone I've met and talked to many times, and he's an author for Star Wars. He wrote the Last Jedi book. Very good guy, very good author. And I remember talking to him about this stuff, and he would say things like, when it came to Luke, between that 30-year time span between episode 6 and episode 7, that's something a lot of authors really want to work on, and that's something Lucasfilm has kind of been keeping on the wraps until what happens after episode 9. Well, now that episode's 9 finished, they can talk about that story, but something he put out on Twitter not too long ago was that for authors, the one thing that has always been absolutely off limits was talking about Yoda species, because it's never really been talked about, like where his species is from, how they come about. Like we don't know Yoda's parents, we don't know Yaddle's parents, we don't know Baby Yoda's parents, and
we don't even know the name of the planet. That's supposed to be a carefully guarded secret, not just in creative versions, but in canon, in the universe. It's supposed to be purposely like they've hid their planet.
I wonder if they're from the it's something that kind of, I've always liked the idea of going into the unknown regions. The Aftermath trilogy touched on that a lot, and I like that aspect of it. And the new Thrawn book, Ascendancy, is of course set in the outer regions with the Chiss Ascendancy. Maybe their species is from the outer regions, the unknown regions of the Star Wars universe, a different galaxy. I mean, there's so many possibilities with it. It would be very disappointing if it was just like, oh yeah, I'll show you where they're from, kind of thing, and it's just some planet we never knew about. But I think Lucas, if anything, he probably had a lot of say and involvement when it comes to the species of Yoda and how that's going to be revealed and talked about in probably seasons 3 and 4.
Especially since Filoni's involved, he wouldn't do something against George Lucas's wishes, even though he might be legally allowed to. But I can't underestimate how excited I am for like the rest of the season. Maybe not so much this next episode, but since we just don't know anything, like one thing with the movies, like you can always kind of tie things together and understand where like the general things could go. Like I remember in the Last Jedi trailer, like, you know how it ended with Rey saying, I need someone to show me my place and all this. And then she offered her hand, and then like Kylo was there and he offered his hand. Like that was an obvious misdirection afterwards. But like when I first watched it, as someone who watches the trailers hundreds of times, I was like, okay, in that shot, Rey's wearing this outfit, and at the end, she's supposed to be wearing this outfit, so I know it's misdirection. Since we don't even have any clips of like the last half of the season, I have no clue what's gonna happen, and I'm gonna avoid spoilers like the plague. I just more than the coronavirus probably. I'm so excited. So many things, so many ways this could go.
Either. I think the things have been kept under wraps so well. There's not a single trailer that shows anything past what seems like to be the next episode. And my prediction was, after seeing this most recent episode, Chapter 11, was that Chapter 12 was going to be kind of like Chapter 9, like a little bit of what we would consider a side story, a little bit of a filler. And if we do go back to Navarro, we do see Grief Karga, we see Cara Dune. That actually wouldn't be a filler. It could be him saying like, "Hey, I got to go to this planet. I don't know how to get there." And if he clearly has a child on hand, so he's going there for a reason, and it might be to get someone who knows where that planet is or how to get there. And if we look at the trailer again, if you guys want to, we can see there's a lot of parts where they're rescuing that blue guy from season 1, from episode 1. Remember that? So it looks like they're breaking into a prison or something like that. Yeah. And that's where a lot of the scenes are coming from. There's some TIE fighters involved. Mando has to use his jetpack, and there's some scout troopers on speeder bikes. So it looks like there's a big ordeal about this guy, the blue guy, and what he kind of is responsible for. And maybe he's the one who has information on Ahsoka and how to get there and all that. So yeah, I think things are gearing up for it.
Maybe the plot of this next episode is he obviously goes back to Navarro to try and get some information on the planet. Maybe ask Cara Dune and Grief Karga for help. And then maybe one of them is like, "Oh, the blue guy that you captured from the first episode, he knows where to go. So we need to go rescue him." Because at this point, we don't really know why the blue guy's back. Because he hasn't really been in the trailers. We see him briefly, like if you pause it at the right time. So it looks like they're trying to keep his presence not secret, but not like out in the open. So I really wonder what his role is. It can't be just a coincidence that they happen to run this guy. I don't believe that. So we'll see. Maybe it's the Empire who wanted the bounty for the blue guy in the first place.
That wouldn't surprise me either. I mean, they wanted the bounty for the child. I mean, that was the big deal with that. And so it seems like one thing I like about this show is even if you have what some of us consider filler episodes, they all tie in. Chapter 6, the one about the prison sequence, that had a lot to do with the last episode before this last one, Chapter 9, where they kind of save him and say, "Hey, we heard that you
Chapter 10
kill the guy," and all that stuff. So everything kind of seems to tie in as time goes on, and that really makes me excited to see what happens next. So before we move on to our next topic, I want to get a prediction from each of you on what you think will happen in the next 2 episodes of The Mandalorian, because I'll give mine first. I think the next one we're going back to Navarro, and Mando finds out how to get to the planet that Ahsoka's on, and then the episode after Chapter 12, so Chapter 13, is when we see Ahsoka, because that's the Dave Filoni episode that he wrote and will likely direct. So that's my prediction. We go to Navarro, we break out the blue guy in order to go to the planet that Ahsoka's on. Goldman, what's your prediction?
Yeah, I'm pretty much the same thing. They go to Navarro, and then because we did speculate that the 5th episode of the season would be Ahsoka's episode, because that's the one Dave Filoni is directing and wrote. But after that, I genuinely have no clue what's going to happen, because it's weird. We heard that Ahsoka is going to have a small role, like maybe in just one episode, and it seems like that's what they've been doing for the most part with these like the side characters. I mean, Cara Dune and Grief Karga, they appeared for 3 episodes or 4, but like the other characters were only in 1 episode. Like I just don't know. So if we get Ahsoka for 1 episode, is Mando gonna leave Baby Yoda with her? Because that's like his end game right now. He's trying to find the Jedi, right? Unless Ahsoka sends Mando somewhere else. I don't know where this season is gonna go, and I love that. I love that so much.
Lunga, you got a prediction for us?
Yeah. I agree with you. We're going back to. I said this the other day too after my watch party. They're going back to Navarro next episode. It's obvious that they're going to be doing that, and they're going to get some information. Now I still don't know how Horatio Sands gets taken out of carbon freeze. What was the reason for him to be taken out of there? Maybe he has some information about this planet or something. Or maybe stuff just malfunctioned after his ship was messed up. I don't know, but that's kind of cool to surprise. Like, how does he fit into this? You know what I mean? And try to potentially get help from Grief and Cara Dune to find her. And I think what we see with the issues we see they're having there is he comes there to get his ship repaired and to get help, and then Moff Gideon tracks him down and starts trouble, and that's gonna set a whole wrench into the works before he can go find Ahsoka. And I think there's a possibility, I'm not going to die in this hill, but I think there's a possibility that we'll get kind of a Luke at the end of Force Awakens deal with Ahsoka, where she doesn't get any lines, or we see a silhouette when he arrives there or something like at the very, very end. And then the next episode is when we have Ahsoka Tano fully formed.
What if Mando hands Baby Yoda to Ahsoka like Rey did with the lightsaber, and Ahsoka just tosses Baby Yoda over the shoulder? That would be.
And that's the thing. I'm with you, Golden, too. I don't know. I'm usually pretty good at figuring stuff out. I don't know where to go with this when it comes to this, because she's not a Jedi.
Yeah.
And she made it really clear that she doesn't want anything to do with that dogmatic religion anymore. But here's the thing. A lot of crap has happened since then.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? There was the whole, I know she was in Rebels, but then, the whole original trilogy happened. Luke Skywalker came up, which I'm sure she has to have heard of him.
She has to. I mean, Luke Skywalker, I mean, if Luke Skywalker is a myth in like The Force Awakens, a myth in quotes, then like everyone knows about him. I feel like Luke Skywalker, the guy who blew up the Death Star. I feel like that's common knowledge. So
I think most of the galaxy knows him as that, the pilot, not the Jedi.
That's possible. Well, Ahsoka would know then, like Luke Skywalker.
Ahsoka, yeah, I'm sure she keeps tabs on this stuff.
And Mandalorian, or our boy Mandalorian, Mando Din Djarin should ask the important question that I would be asking her is like, hey, what the hell are you doing? Like, Luke took on both of the Sith by himself, and you were just chilling out here on a planet. I'd be mad.
Well, funny you ask, because we were looking for another Jedi too, called Ezra.
His name's Ezra. Speaking of which, he's with a guy named Thrawn right over here. Like,
yeah.
That's another.
You ever heard of the Chiss?
Because the epilogue of Rebels, where she leaves with Sabine to go find Ezra, that takes place after Return of the Jedi.
Mm-hmm.
So the question does bring up, what's Ahsoka doing? Was she stranded on Malachor all those years? I mean, she had to get off somewhere. Maybe I doubt they'll address that in this show, because it kind of would feel a little weird considering the casual audience doesn't know who Ahsoka is. But we'll probably get some answers at some point.
They have to get. I mean, the last time we saw her was her leaving with Sabine to find Ezra. That
was like 5 years before the timeline we're in right now with Mando.
Yeah.
45 years, yeah.
Yeah, right. So I mean, either they found Ezra and Thrawn and they will not talk about it, or
they failed the mission.
Since it's in the unknown regions, they probably didn't find Ezra and Thrawn, or maybe Ezra and Thrawn found them. Like, maybe it gets into the overall.
What if this sets up? We couldn't find him. Can you help us?
Yeah. It could also set up they don't like what they found. Like maybe they found Thrawn and Ezra, and whatever Thrawn was scared of in the unknown regions comes into play, and that because Jon Favreau was teased at wanting it to be Game of Thrones, like where everything kind of connects. And that's the big thing is like, oh, there's you think the Empire is a big deal. Wait until you hear this thing called, and freaking expanded universe fans blow their minds. Wait until you hear about the Yuuzhan Vong. And
oh my god, Lunga, literally, you just made my head explode. Like what? So Mando goes to Ahsoka, and Ahsoka's like, I'm technically not a Jedi, but I know a Jedi. He's currently missing. Maybe if you help me go find him, we can give Baby Yoda to him, and then him being Ezra. So like maybe that's how it comes into play. I mean, it would be possible. It would be a neat way to answer the question.
Yeah, because
it's organic. It's very organic.
As of what we know, the only Jedi every Jedi she knew was that she didn't know if Obi-Wan survived. Okay, I'm sure if she heard anything about the original trilogy, she heard Obi-Wan dies and there's this Luke Skywalker who's Anakin's son. But as far as she knows, every Jedi's dead that she knows. The only one that she heard of that was still alive was Ezra.
Oh,
so I mean, I'm just putting the pieces that we have. You know what I mean?
That's the first lead I have into where the show could possibly go. I would love that.
Or that could be the springboard into their series.
Possible.
Yeah, Ahsoka's supposed to get her own series. There's talks about Ezra and Thrawn. I mean, everyone's supposed to get their own series. If you guys want to move on to the next, I guess, kind of big topic, at least for us fans of the films and the diehards, is we got more information about George Lucas, and he talks about his plans for a Star Wars sequel trilogy that he was going to make. And here's exactly what he had to say. it says that Darth Maul was trained by a girl, Darth Talon, or he was training a girl, Darth Talon, who was in the comic books as his apprentice. Lucas explained she was the new Darth Vader, and most of the action was with her. So these were the two main villains of the trilogy. Maul eventually became the godfather of crime, and in that universe, as the Empire falls, he takes over. The movies are about how Leia, and he says, I mean, who else is going to be the leader, is trying to rebuild the Republic. And this is where Darth Maul's crime syndicate comes in. They still have the apparatus of the Republic, but they have to get it under control from the gangsters. He says Luke would have also played a more of an active role in this movies, single-handedly restarting the Jedi from scratch, because so few Jedi would have been left by this point, and it would have taken about 20 years, and he said about 50 to 100 Jedi would have survived. And he says by the end of the trilogy, Luke would have rebuilt much of the Jedi, and we would have the renewal of the New Republic, with Leia, Senator Organa, becoming the Supreme Chancellor in charge of everything. So she ended up being the chosen one. Now, this outline, of course, is a lot different from the story treatments we have heard in the past, the ones that he pitched to Disney. So there's a lot to discuss here. And the first question I want to ask you guys is, what do you guys think about Leia being the chosen one in George Lucas sequels, at least in this version? I'll give this to you first, Lunga. Or my bad, go ahead.
This was very interesting to me when I read this, okay? Because I'm gonna throw this out there. Because you've said it, you kind of said it too, Star Wars Only. Other people have said it all the time. Goldman might share this, I don't know. But the whole fallacy of everything they've done destroys the original trilogy and Lucas's vision, because it destroys the fact that Anakin was the chosen one. Mm-hmm. This was Lucas's idea that Leia was going to be the new chosen one. So, was the chosen one that important, or was it just a tagline for him in the prequels? You know what I mean? It opens up a lot of interesting things, and I gotta say, I liked what I read there. I thought it might have been good, but it doesn't jive with what was his other thing. This whole microbiotic universe he was going to do, right? How does that play into this? What's real? I don't know what's real anymore.
Well, you got to realize he's done a lot of outlines for the sequels, of course. I think the microbiotic universe is the one that he pitched to Disney in 2012, like the outline he gave then, and then this outline, from everything I've researched about this, because this really piqued my interest in the sequels from Lucas. A lot of this sounds like story ideas he had post 2005, like around the time he was making Clone Wars and brought Maul back. This was around the same time I felt like this was being written. So that might be one of the situations, or hear me out on this, maybe he's mixing the two. Maybe he's having it where Darth Maul is the godfather of crime, and basically he and Darth Talon are the main villains of the entire story. Luke's got to rebuild the Jedi Order. Leia's trying to rebuild a Republic, and they got to get it all back from these gangsters. But during this time of trying to fight back against Maul and Darth Talon, both sides realize about the microbiotic universe, about the midichlorians, and we explore on that just a little bit more. Goldman, what do you have to say?
This recent piece of information about like this Darth Maul and stuff is just complete whack. Like, not saying it's good or bad, but compared to everything else we've heard about George Lucas's sequels, whether it's from him, whether it's from, I believe there's some good information from the art books of the sequels, and also some of these other reference guides that have some nitpicks here and there. This is completely different than everything else we've seen before. Because one thing is that I made like a little outline of things that we do know were supposed to be in George Lucas's sequels in terms of like vague things, right? We know that the sequels were supposed to follow Anakin Skywalker's grandchildren. That the main character would be some teenage girl of some kind. That Luke would be a hermit on an island. And that's really like the extent of it. But this information that we got here is nothing like that. This takes place a few years after the original trilogy, so you're not going to have Luke or Leia's kids be the main characters. I mean, they're babies at this point. It doesn't follow a main like new teenage girl. It's Leia, so it's just really weird. I think these might have been ideas that were pitched. Like you said, maybe during when he was making the prequels, because the information that this book comes from is legit. Like I bought the it's called the Star Wars Archives. There's the first volume that covers
versus 2005. I think.
Yeah, I have the first one, which is 97 or 77 to 83, which covers the originals, and like it's a great book. So this stuff's legit. I'm not saying who's writing the prequel version is lying or anything. Like that's legit stuff. But maybe I think that he wrote that maybe during the prequels, and then once Disney bought Star Wars, he like maybe not so much scrapped that, but then he had his idea for what we know now was in quotes supposed to be George Lucas's sequels. So this is, and also Darth Maul being the villain, that's just really, it's really weird. It also makes sense though, because I did look this up. It was George Lucas's idea to bring Darth Maul back in Clone Wars. So maybe that was his backdoor way of explaining why Darth Maul is alive in his sequels. So it's possible. I also love, like I say, this Darth Talon would be a main character. I mean, that means the Sith are back. So doesn't that technically ruin the prophecy?
No, yeah.
I know a lot of people, like, I feel like whether you love the sequels or you hate the sequels, whenever information comes out about George Lucas's sequels, they try to use it to like legitimize their side. Like, as Lunga said, it doesn't really matter to me what George Lucas would have done with these movies. I still love the sequels. Nothing that George Lucas would have made is going to change my opinion on these films. What he could have made could have been better, could have been worse. We'll never know. But it's really, what we got here is really, it's kind of a crazy storyline. Mark Maul being like the head of like some crime syndicate. It's basically what we got in Solo, right?
Yeah.
So maybe that's where Filoni got his ideas from Clone Wars. It's an interesting thing. But it really surprised me considering how much it contradicts what we know about George Lucas's sequels.
Here's what I think happened when it came to the ones he gave to Disney and the story we have here. I think after he brought back Maul in Clone Wars, he had this idea of making Maul the main villain for the sequels and Luke rebuilding the Jedi Order and all that, the stuff that we've heard this past week or so. And I think that's what, because some people don't believe the recent information that Pablo Hidalgo came out with in a new book saying that George Lucas would have killed off Luke in Episode 8, just like he died off in The Last Jedi, the Disney Episode 8 for the sequels. So my theory is that he told Mark Hamill this version of the Star Wars sequels that he had outlined. He told him that version where Luke dies in Episode 9 after rebuilding the Jedi Order. He becomes one with the Force, and it deals all with Maul, and Leia's a big figure. Because remember, from what we've heard of George Lucas, I think on both versions, we don't hear anything really about Han Solo. Yeah. And so when he had a meeting for the sequels, he only had a meeting with Carrie Fisher and Mark Hamill. So this story outline makes a lot of sense because Carrie Fisher's character, Leia, would have a very big role, of course, being the chosen one, and Luke would have a bigger role as well because he's rebuilding the Jedi Order. So I think he had all this in motion and in his mind before he sold to Disney. And what happened with Disney is when they were negotiating things, Lucas walked away from the table first, then Disney walked away from the table, then they came back, and I think Lucas walked away again. And then Lucas told Bob Iger, he's like, you know what? I have these story treatments, and I'll give them to you after you buy the rights. And that's a whole nother story that I don't want to get into. But basically, I think what happened was between 2011 and 2012, when he was negotiating with Disney, he was like, okay, I need to, he basically decided there's going to be a sequel trilogy. There's going to be 7, 8, and 9, and either I'm going to make it or Disney is going to make it, but using my story treatments. So since I'm not going to have a great say on what happens if I sell the company, they can at least use the story treatments. So because of that, he put in his story treatments, Luke dies in Episode 8. Midichlorians and a microbiotic universe is something that this trilogy will focus on, and it's going to be about Darth Vader's grandchildren, just to kind of give them a base of what to follow in their sequel trilogy. And of course, they didn't even really remotely follow that, other than Luke dying and being a hermit. So I think it was kind of this was like his initial draft, and what we got from the Disney trilogy outlines, the one that he sold to Disney, I think that's kind of his revised version. And, we know Lucas changed things a lot. I mean, the ideas he had for the sequels going back to 1977 were completely different than what we have even here. So that's my theory on why these two stories are so vastly different. Lunga, you got any thoughts on, do you think this would have been better than the sequels we have? Do you even like the story idea that we have here?
This is gonna sound so bad, but I mean, there's a lot of things that could be better than what we got. Let's be fair. I mean, Colin Trevorrow's script, I feel like that meme, like, hey, it's like, I'm like, I might have liked that too. It doesn't mean that this story that we got was necessarily bad. It just wasn't done right. That's the main issue. It was just a cluster. So yeah, I mean, this already sounds better to me than what we got in the sequels. And again, I'm talking about story wise. Like, you could have kept the sequels. You could have kept Rey Skywalker. You could have kept Finn. You could have kept Poe. You could have kept all these people. Just did the story better. That's my only problem.
Yeah.
It's not the
It's a big
characters.
execution
It's
thing.
what you did with them. That's the problem I have.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly, and I think Lucas' story sounds very good. I think it sounds very satisfying to a lot of fans, like mainly kids for the prequels who grew up watching Darth Maul as the main villain of The Phantom Menace, coming back in Clone Wars. I think this would have really kind of come full circle with the Lucas story. Even this version of the sequels that he's talking about here, having Darth Maul be kind of the final villain, but also like the pawn at the beginning of the entire trilogy with Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, and all that. So I think things would have been very interesting if this is what came out, but I could also see a lot of people getting upset and being like, well, wait, didn't he die in Episode 1, The Phantom Menace?
I was going to say,
Clone Wars?
Can we also appreciate the fact that according to Lucas, as far as he was concerned, Maul was dead? You know what I mean?
Retcon. It would have been.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny how this kind of breaks, everyone, I'm not going to say everyone, a lot of diehard prequel fans who think Lucas is God and his say is final when it comes to Star Wars, which is a very solid argument, don't realize he is his own worst hypocrite and contradicts himself all the time. Like, I never liked the Chosen One thing about Anakin, and this completely destroys it. Like what do you say? Like, they're like, oh, well, the sequels don't adhere to Lucas's vision of Anakin being the Chosen One. It's like, well, yeah, neither does his sequels, though. So what do you do here? Goldman, you got any final thoughts on the George Lucas sequels before we move on to the next topic?
I think what we got in terms of like information with this specific thing, it's way too vague to say if it would have been good or not. Again, for me, I like the sequels for the most part, so I'm more than satisfied with what we got. I think a lot of people underestimate how similar at least episode 7 and 8 would have been to what George Lucas probably would have done. Maybe not so much with like the First Order, and definitely no Star Killer base, but a lot of the broad strokes, maybe in terms of where the characters might have gone. I mean, not until episode 9. Episode 9 is probably nothing like what George Lucas would have done. But I think episode 7 and 8 are a lot more similar than people might think. I mean, we'll never know. Oh, we might, but we'll never get those movies. So, yeah.
Unfortunately, we won't unless we go to like an alternate reality and time travel or whatever. Maybe get them to stop selling it to Disney. But I'm sure if he made these films, a lot of people would hate him, and a lot of people would be mad at Lucas still. It seems to be the cycle of Star Wars movies. A new trilogy comes out, and we go, oh, but the last one was so much better. So maybe that would have happened again.
I think George Lucas selling Star Wars probably not saved his legacy, but definitely helped it. Because if George Lucas made the sequels and they got the same reaction that the prequels did, then that's like a double negative on George Lucas. George Lucas was fairly disliked, like in the early 2010s. Like, people would still crap on him, saying he ruined their childhood. And then
Red Tails came out too. You remember that? Red Tails was a big thing, and that flopped, and a lot of people got mad at Lucas about that. Lunga, you remember Howard the Duck, the movie? I mean, that alone, and then Lucas with Indiana Jones, what was it, 4? Of nuke the fridge and getting in that refrigerator and aliens coming in. I mean, yeah, Lucas has been getting a bad rap for a while. So I think you're right, Goldman. Him stepping away for Star Wars, probably mentally for his health. I mean, from his friends and family, people who are close to him have said that, he's never been happier in his life than he is now. So I think it's been very good for him.
Because people love him now. He's like, the prequels are beloved. You're like, oh, if only George Lucas was still here to do Star Wars. He's like, yeah. It's kind of like that. I don't know. He just feels like, it's like, yeah.
Yeah, he feels validated, and we're nostalgic for things we no longer have anymore. And so I think for a lot of us Star Wars fans, even if Lucas still had the rights to Star Wars, we would probably be nostalgic for the original trilogy, the prequel trilogy. And now that he's gone, it's like, all right, well, now we're nostalgic for George Lucas being involved in Star Wars. But let's move on to the last topic for today, and that is this news that came from Deadline. They talked a little bit about the Leslie Hedland Star Wars series, but also the Cara Dune series, which was supposed to have a co-star of Bo-Katan, who we just saw in the last episode of The Mandalorian. According to these guys, the Cara Dune series is not happening anymore. I don't know if the Cara Dune series has been canceled, but it was reported earlier this year from Kessel Run Transmissions that this was a big push, and they weren't the only ones who have reported on this, but there's supposedly a big push inside Lucasfilm for a Cara Dune series. And me, Lunga, and I think even you, Goldman, we all kind of predicted that this was going to be the Leslie Hedland show, since this will seem to be female-centric. It's going to be about martial arts. But Deadline came out this past week and said that this is not happening. There's not a Cara Dune series in the works. So I want to get your guys' take on this. Do you guys think that this was a Twitter thing? I mean, if you remember, the actress for Cara Dune, Gina Carano, has been having a nonstop battle with the people on Twitter, and I don't know if that had any influence on this or not. Lunga, you got any thoughts?
I mean, it does look like that's what it was supposed to be, but who knows now? I mean, listen, the internet had me convinced that Sasha Banks was Sabine Wren, and so much to the point that I completely went over my own instincts of watching it. So it could be completely internet, and we're getting sucked into it. You know what I mean? I think we have to see the rest of the season, because as of right now, what do we really have to have Bo-Katan and Cara Dune in the same show? What reason is there for that, other than it's two women? It's like I don't see a reason for it. I would think, I don't know. It's possible, but there's so many female characters now. If you think about it, though, we have Bo-Katan now. We have Sasha Banks' character, which could go off and do something. We have Ahsoka Tano. We have Cara Dune. There's a lot of female characters, so it could be any number of them. It could be Bo-Katan and Bo-Katan and Sasha Banks' character. That could be the one that we're looking at.
Yeah, that's a good point. They talked a little bit about the Leslie Hedland series. At least Leslie Hedland herself came out and said that it was going to explore a new timeline and part of the Star Wars universe that we haven't explored yet. She said something about pushing the canon a little bit and talking about the religion of Star Wars.
You gotta get a better picture. I hate that picture.
Dude, there's not that many.
It triggers me every time I look at this picture.
Do you like this one a little better? This one
it's a little bit better. It's a little bit better. Maybe I just don't like her face.
I got a few that are not. I hate to be that guy, but she definitely does not have that. I'm not gonna say she doesn't have an appealing face, but she looks like a Karen to me. There's one bad one I have of her. I'm gonna pull it up right now once it loads. This one, yeah.
Believe it or not, that one actually looks at least like I'm not out to stab you. I'm not looking at you. You know what I mean? Yeah,
well, Lunga, we're not allowed to talk about the looks
of
a woman like this. We can't be sexist towards her, and definitely can't fat shame because she's skinny. I'm not gonna say she's fucking big or all.
It has nothing to do with her weight. It has nothing to do with her weight at all.
No, it's just this picture.
Just that picture. It's that picture is very condescending. That's what when I look at that picture, I feel condescension. That's what bothers me about that picture.
Okay. Well, Goldman, what are your thoughts on not only the Cara Dune series apparently not happening? What do you think that means for the potential Leslie Hedland series? New timeline, new canon? I mean, what are your thoughts?
I was never sold that a Cara Dune show was going to happen. I always thought the concept would be really weird. I mean, she was in the season 1 more than most characters, but she still didn't do much. I don't believe it had anything to do with her on Twitter. I just don't. I don't believe Lucasfilm would pay too much attention to that. I mean, Gina Carano didn't say anything that's legit cancel worthy, so I don't know. At the end of the day, I'm kind of happy for this. I mean, Gina Carano or Cara Dune's a cool character, but I don't think she should be getting her own show. If they're going to make new shows, I'd rather them do so many other different things. In terms of the Leslie Hedland show, when they did mention that they would explore a lot of different, as you said, pushing the religion of Star Wars, I guess. I can't picture Cara Dune being the focus of a show that does that.
It's true.
So I'm starting to think that maybe Leslie Hedland's show would not have was never planned to have Cara Dune. But I'm kind of glad this show's not happening. I don't think that character should have her own show, even though I kind of like the character.
I'm with you. I really like Gina Carano as a person and a martial artist, but I think that if I want to focus on new Star Wars series and new stories to explore, Cara Dune's timeline alone is not something that interests me. I will admit this makes me a little bit more interested in the Leslie Hedland show because it's going to be a new timeline, a new part of the Star Wars universe that we haven't really talked about much. And also, It's been reported that it's going to be not only female centric but martial arts focused. So now it's like, well, how does that tie in? So I'm kind of perplexed on what's going to happen. Do you guys want to give some predictions, like just one solid prediction on what the Leslie Hedland show, the timeline it would be about, and what it's going to be? Lunga, I'll give this to you first.
Geez. I mean, timeline could be way down. I mean, unless they're trying to up production, because we're getting Obi-Wan. We're hearing that this Boba Fett thing is supposed to be happening, right? Pretty quickly. We're gonna have another season of Mandalorian. We're gonna have Cassian, yeah, Cassian Andor series. So hers is already, fifth on the list. I would say. So I mean, I don't think we're gonna see this series. It's actually the series coming out probably until 2023, maybe even 2024. We probably won't see teasers or information about it until, I would say, early to mid 2023.
That's a good point. You have any thoughts on what it will be about, and where in the Star Wars universe and timeline wise, before episode 1, after episode 9, anything like that?
I mean, like I said earlier, we don't know where this could be going. And you said, the quote you said from her, it's like a whole thing we have never explored. And well, there's lots of things we haven't explored. Let's be fair in Star Wars. I mean, I don't think she's going to be going deep into the past. I think they're waiting to see how these books do. And we could possibly see her series be the first of the High Republic ones. That's what I think could possibly happen.
It's a good prediction. I actually like the High Republic thought. Goldman, what's your prediction for Leslie Hedland's Star Wars series?
I'd say my solid prediction would be that the protagonists of the show won't be any characters that we know. I just think the show will be completely new, and that's what I want. But another thing that just crossed my mind is, as Lunga said, this show is probably not going to come out for a while, maybe 23 or even 24. It's possible that maybe this show could tie into whatever trilogy is supposed to come out, because we are supposed to have this trilogy of films, and I believe it's now 23, 25, and 27.
You're right.
So maybe this is a show where we have like the main characters of the movies, and then there's these side characters in the movies, and then those side characters are the main characters of the show. That could be possible, and the show's like, it kind of explores the world of whatever the movies are focusing on. I can see that happening. If they're planning that far ahead, that's definitely possible. But yeah, there's so many unknowns. But I'd say my solid prediction is that the protagonist of this show will be someone we don't know as of right now.
My prediction personally is going to be this series takes about 10 to 5 years before The Phantom Menace, episode 1. And it's going to be about like 2 or 3 female Jedi in training or whatever, and kind of doing their thing in the galaxy. It's a unique timeline because it's, the Republic at its height. It's not really, the Sith really aren't around as far as they know, and it just seems like a safer route to go. I really don't. We looked at her track record last week, and there's nothing even remotely close to Star Wars. So it just seems like kind of a bold move by Lucasfilm to put this into a new canon or new timeline that they've never done before. So I'm a little sus on this series, but it doesn't seem like a lot of people are going to be hyped for it. Dutastic says my hot take is that there's going to be a female character, and since it's female centric, I think you're right. But I think that's all the time we have for the show, guys. Goldman has a poll he's going to bring up. What do you have on the poll, buddy?
So one thing I'm doing just on my channel, I want to do a lot of things that kind of involve the audience, ways the audience can get involved with my videos. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to post a link now. For this next week, I'm just doing a poll where people can choose their favorite Star Wars movies. I want to try and get as many votes as I can, just a larger sample size, the better. So you'll have all 11 movies. You're going to choose your favorite 5. And then a week from Sunday, I'm going to take all the results that I've gotten. Hopefully it's a decent amount of people. And I'm just going to release the results in a video. I think it'd be a fun way to get people involved. And I'm curious to see what a lot of people's rankings are. And a lot of my audience, if you will, is are big sequel fans. And I want to try and get a wider audience so it's not kind of skewed. So if you're interested and you just want to take a minute out of your day to list your 5 favorite Star Wars movies, I'm going to put it in the chat now. So yeah, it would really help me out. And that's all. So thank you, Star Wars Only.
Yeah, no, of course. And I hope you get a good list. I'll probably put mine in as well. It's always hard to, I don't know, for me to actually give my top 5 because it feels like it changes every week. Lunga, you got any updates? I know your channel just hit a year old this past week. Congratulations.
Thank you. Just hit a year. I mean, we're just going to keep doing what we're doing. Like I said, unlike your channel, this is what I, for people that watch here, I know I've had a few people come over. Zeus is one of them. I've seen him in the live streams a lot lately. And I know we do our Chatooine show here once a week. My channel, while we do try to do as many Star Wars stories as we can, there's only so much we can do. And since we stream 5 days a week, that's why it's a general nerdy channel, not just focused on Star Wars. I don't do a lot of uploaded content. Sometimes I do certain things if there's a story. But ours is mostly a live stream, interactive, entertaining personality kind of deal where we talk about nerdy stuff going on and interact with the viewers and stuff and answer questions. So, if you like the kind of stuff we're doing here with Chatooine talking and interacting with us, that's what I do on my channel pretty much 5 days a week. So if you want to interact and have some fun and talk about this stuff, head on over to the Great Council, please.
Yep, both of their channel links are in the description below as well. I want to thank you all for tuning in with Chatooine with us today. It's been a good one, and we'll be back next week to talk about the next episode of The Mandalorian and any news that comes out. So thank you all for joining us. It's been a good chat. Can't wait to see you all on Chatooine again. But until then, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe on this video, the channel, Goldman's channel, Lunga's channel, because it helps all of us out. So we will